Today I wanna explore the idea behind MCP, Model Context Protocol, because it's kind of like a buzzword which you can hear or see in various places on X and so on, and it's not super new, but I haven't really had a closer look yet, so that's what I want to have today. Also, I'll play a bit with Windsurf. I've started using it yesterday, so I don't know anything about it essentially, but yeah, I'll use that a bit. And yeah, hi everyone, great to have you here, and I'd say let's dive right in, shall we? And for that, here's Windsurf. I actually want to start by exploring what exactly this model context protocol thing is. And I have like a rough idea, and I'll outline or describe that idea, and then we'll take a look whether I was right or wrong. Now, I will say already that it's not something super new. It's just been getting a bit more traction over the last couple of years, I'd say. But it actually, to my knowledge, was introduced in late November last year. So 3 months ago already. But still, as I said, it kind of like became a bit more popular. At least that's how it feels to me over the last couple of weeks. And yeah. So here's what MCP is all about, or what I think it's all about. Let's say we have an application, an LLM-based application. So here we have an LLM-based application, something like ChatGPT, or ChatGPT is maybe not the best example because I don't think it supports MCP yet. But let's say something like Cursor or Windsurf. So such an AI editor. Let's say that is what we have. Okay, so we have like such an application. And the problem we then might face is that in this application, or that we want to give this application or the underlying AI models, to be precise, access to various tools and also like knowledge sources and so on. So extra information and capabilities we want to give that application and the AI model that's used by that application. So we might have some backend API. Let's say we have like the Google search API or Google search in general. And that could be anything. Like it could be Google search. That could be one thing we might want to be able to reach out to from our application because we want to be able to get recent information and data. We also might have some docs, which we might be interested in. So we want to view some docs page. And we maybe also, let's say we have one other thing. Let's say we also have what else could we have? Yeah, we have GitHub. Let's say we have GitHub, and here we maybe don't want to get information, but we want to be able to create new repositories or load issues or comment on issues. We might want to be able to, in our AI application, in Cursor, for example, we might maybe want to be able to like fetch the latest 5 issues or a summary of the most recent or most popular or long-standing, whatever, issues, and then we maybe write some code to fix those issues, and we might want to comment on to those issues. And we might want to do all of that from inside Cursor or whichever AI-based application it is, so that we never have to leave that. So, put in other words, we want our LLM-based application to be able to interact with all these extra services, tools, websites, whatever you want to call it. That is something we might want to do. Now, the problem is that the AI tools or these AI models, LLMs, they're just text generators. They are just that. No matter how smart they might feel they are just text generators. They're just predicting tokens, token after token after token. But we can, of course, use this text prediction mechanism to have them tell us when they want to use certain tools. So we could, for example, say, hey, you are an AI application, you are some chatbot, but if you need to, you can search on Google. Just let me know. And then if we give that extra context to the LLM, to the AI application, then when we ask a question it maybe is not able to answer, kind of because it's not thinking, but where it's likely that it wants to predict tokens that basically describe the tool we just described to it. So it might predict tokens, or it might generate text where it says, yeah, I want to perform a web search. So if I tell the LLM, if I add to the context the information, you can search the web. If you want to, please reply with search : and then the search term. And I then ask, who's the current president of the USA? Then, because of how all these parameters are set up in the AI model, the most likely outcome might indeed be that it's not going to hallucinate and come up with some name, but that it's instead, because of what's in its context, that it's going to reply with search : current president of the USA. So that could be how it tells me that it wants to use a tool. Now, the problem with that is, if I'm the one building the AI application, I then have to react to that output, to that search : search term output, and I have to provide the code, I have to write the code in advance to take that search term and then perform the Google search, take the results, feed them back into the context window of the LLM, and then say, okay, the question was, who's the current president of the USA? Here is the extra information I got from Google based on the search term you told me to look for. And then with all that extra knowledge in the context window, it then can probably give the right answer. That's how tool use works. No matter if we're dealing with MCP or not, if you're using ChatGPT with web access, that is in the end what's happening behind the scenes. The AI, the LLM simply has some system instructions that tell it, you can search the web if you want to, please reply with some special token and the search term, and then on OpenAI's servers, some code written by OpenAI engineers, most likely, will execute and will then enrich that context window with the search results. As a user, we don't see that, but that's what's happening. So that was a very long explanation. And by the way, I'll get back to the questions here in the chat in a second. That was a long explanation of how tool use works. Now, how does this MCP thing fit in? To my understanding, the problem is that if we want to give Cursor, Windsurf, whichever application it may be, could also be an application we're writing from scratch. If we want to give that application access to various tools, we have to write all the code that tells the LLM which special tokens we expect, and that then performs the actual action of reaching out to some API. So that performs the action of reaching out to GitHub to load the issues. We have to write all that code on our own. We have to wire up all the APIs of all the services, websites, whatever it is that we want to provide as tools to the LLMs. We have to write all that code. We have to describe the LLM, how to tell us that it wants to use a tool. We have to do all of that. The idea behind MCP is that we have a standardized protocol where people can write MCP servers, for example, for GitHub, let's say, which uses a standardized way, you could say, of providing information to the LLM about tools it might use, and about receiving LLM output, performing its work, and feeding that data back into the LLM, so that we don't have to do all that manual wire-up work. that's at least how I understand it. So the idea behind MCP is that it simplifies the process of connecting our LLM or our application that uses an LLM like Cursor to various tools and websites, services, whatever it may be. So that's my understanding. So that if we want to interact with those various APIs, we don't have to write the wire up code manually, but instead we would have our MCP, our MCPs, I should say, multiple MCPs. So maybe one for Google, one for visiting a website to view the docs, and one for GitHub. We might have various MCPs installed. These could be MCPs, MCP servers written by us or written by others. We'll explore some MCP servers that have already been written by others later. And then these MCPs would in the end reach out to the appropriate services and websites. But we therefore have to do less wire up work. That is my understanding of how that works. Okay. Now, we'll take a look at the official description and see whether that's right or not in a second. But first, I saw a couple of questions or comments. Your React course is very useful to me, Jonas. That's great to hear. Thank you so much for the great feedback. Super happy to hear that the course is helpful. By the way, shameless plug, as I sometimes like to do it. If you want to learn all about React and you maybe don't just want to learn online, you can take a look at my book, React Key Concepts. It was actually best-selling yesterday, which means a lot to me. I teach the latest version of React from the ground up in there. And if you, like me, sometimes like to pick up a book instead of just spending your time in front of the computer, that might be a great choice. So what else do we have? Can't understand frontend, what to do. You also don't have a Node.js course. I bought your React and Angular both. Sir, how to master backend in 3 minutes or 3 months, I guess, I hope. So I do have a Node.js course and I might update it this year, but even without the update, it's a great course, teaches you Node.js from the ground up. So I do have that. If you can't understand frontend, the React and Angular courses are, of course, about front-end web development. The question is whether you don't understand what front-end development means or you don't understand React and Angular. Those, of course, have a learning curve. And in general, learning something in 3 months is possible and not possible. You can definitely get a very solid foundation in 3 months, but practice makes perfect. And practicing, building stuff, that, of course, is like a process that never ends, but it definitely does not end after 3 months. Okay. So let's take a look at this official blog post here by Anthropic, where they introduced the idea of model context protocol. And I'll probably not read through it word by word, but we'll see. So today we're open sourcing the Model Context Protocol, new standard for connecting AI assistants to the systems where the data lives, including content repository, business tools, and development environments. So that's essentially what I just described, that we have like various sites, services, tools we want to expose to an LLM. And the idea behind this Model Context Protocol is that we have a standardized way, a simple, clearly defined way, so that we have to do less manual wire up work, especially since you don't have to write all these MCP servers on your own, but you can use existing ones written by other people for popular services so that you can integrate them into your LLM-based application with ease. As AI assistants, yet even the most sophisticated models are constrained by their isolation from data. So that's what I kind of explained before. These LLMs, of course, they're just predicting words and tokens, and all the knowledge they have, or the likelihoods, the probabilities for suggesting different tokens, that all comes from their training data. That training data, of course, has a knowledge cutoff, as you all know, and therefore especially recent information is not in there, but also like domain-specific information. If I want to ask an LLM about information of my tax documents, if I want to get a summary of like the tax documents I submitted over the last 10 years, it hopefully won't know that. And that's where I could like give it access to those documents by uploading them, of course, or by like giving it access to a Dropbox folder, which contains these documents. And I could use the Dropbox API or write some wrapper code around the Dropbox API to do what I described before, to give that extra tool to the LLM. And that becomes even easier if I use this standardized way, or maybe there already is an existing Dropbox MCP, which I can just install into my application, and boom, it suddenly has access to my Dropbox and can fetch those documents without me uploading them, for example. So that's the idea. Every new data source requires its own custom implementation. So that's exactly what I meant with the manual wire-up work. If we don't have this MCP thing here, if we instead have to manually wire up all these sources, we have to write all the code for telling the LLM though that it has those tools, and for then actually interacting with those tools if the LLM wants to. We have to do all of that manually, and MCP addresses this challenge. So my understanding there was correct, yay. It provides a universal open standard for connecting AI systems with data sources. And it's actually not just data sources, I would say. It's really also about doing stuff, not just about fetching information, fetching knowledge, which is very useful too. And maybe right now the most useful use case, but it's also about doing stuff, like about sending a post request through an MCP to GitHub to close an issue or anything like that. The result is a simpler, more reliable way to give AI systems access to the data they need and to the actions they need, I would say. So it's an open standard defined by Anthropic, I believe, to enable two-way connections between their data sources and AI-powered tools. And that's also important. The large language model itself will not use those tools. It will just get information from the application in which it runs. So from Cursor, by the way, or from Windsurf. It will get information that certain tools exist and how it should reply, so which tokens it should generate if it wants to use certain tools, just as I described it before. So that's how this connection is enabled or is established. The architecture is straightforward. Developers can either expose their data through MCP servers, what I described before, or build AI applications, MCP clients. And that's also important. We have like a server client structure for this MCP thing. The servers are the workhorses that actually fetch data, perform actions, so that contain the code for talking to the GitHub API, for example. And the clients are all those AI applications that use an LLM. So something like Cursor, something like your chatbot you're building, whatever it is. So MCPs like REST and SOAP, which try to achieve standardization in HTTP requests, but with LLMs. Yeah, I would say, exactly. So the idea is really to have like a standardized protocol, hence the name, so that not every AI application, LLM-based application, has to reinvent the wheel and come up with its own way of wiring things up. Will you release a new course about these concepts? Maybe, I'm not sure. Could do that. Like building things with AI is like a course idea I have in my mind, but I'm not sure at this point. Got so many ongoing things that I can't promise it. And just to be clear, MCP is not using REST or SOAP, as I understand it, but instead it's a new protocol, and how those MCP servers then do the thing they should do. So how an MCP server closes issues on GitHub or reads a document. that is totally up to the developer of that server. There is no protocol for that. There just is a protocol for that interface between server and client, not between server and whichever service that server uses. You can implement that in whichever way you want. If you're building a GitHub MCP server that should be able to interact with GitHub, you could do that through the GitHub API, or you could do it through Playwright, I guess. Open a browser window, log in, click around, go there, and like simulate a user. I guess you could do that too. Probably you wouldn't do that, but you could. Max, would you recommend your book to those who have taken your video courses on Udemy? If yes, why? So I think in general, of course, if you know a lot about React already, this book will teach you maybe some new things. I have deep dives in there to understand React server components a bit better and so on. But of course, React is React. The advantage of that book, besides these deep dives, is if you like books. If you don't like books, it's not for you. That's clear. Though there is an ebook too. But the advantage is that you can quickly look things up, I would say. And well, the ebook might also be better for that than looking it up in a video course. So that can be one huge advantage. In addition, of course, and that's the main advantage I see in books, not just in my book, I sometimes really like to spend time away from a screen, and that's where books can be really helpful, of course. Okay, back to MCP. So that's the problem they solve. Now here they're introducing 3 major components: the protocol specification and SDKs for building MCP servers, I guess. Local MCP server support in Claude desktop apps, so that you can install MCP servers or connect MCP servers to Claude desktop to give Claude access to all the tools and data sources your MCPs are exposing, and an open source repository of MCP servers. So I guess of servers you could add to other applications as well, or where you could share your server you built. So you can of course also use AI to build those servers, that's clear. Okay, we get some early adopters. Getting started, developers can start building and testing MCP connectors today. All Claude AI plans support connecting MCP servers to Claude desktop app. Okay, so I guess we'll just jump right in. Sure. So here's the repository with servers shared by the community, I guess. So servers you could install. What's the URL of the document I'm reading? So that first one, that was the introducing the model context protocol blog article from anthropic.com/news/model-context-protocol, this one. And now I just followed the links in that article to, for example, go to that model context protocol servers GitHub repo, where we can find servers which we can install into our tools to get new capabilities. And it's maybe interesting to see what we have there. By the way, I do plan to also build my own MCP server because I want to understand how it works under the hood. But first, maybe it's helpful to see which servers we already have and which servers we could be using in Windsurf or Cursor or the Claude desktop apps or whatever. And you can read on your own that, for example, like we have that GitHub server I mentioned before. And if I click on that, we can see that this GitHub MCP server gives us some features like being able to create branches, so that I can, if the LLM-based application decides that a new branch is needed, it can do that automatically or by asking me first, but it can do that if I gave it access, if I connected the AI application to this MCP server. Of course, for that, I need an AI application that supports MCP. So that is a MCP client. And by the way, Alfredo, please people don't let an AI control your damn PC. Yeah, I would recommend that too. I've actually seen it today on X, some post, which was about like using AI with all these capabilities, all these like MCPs we have and so on, for running commands on your machine unchecked. I guess you can also enable YOLO mode in Cursor. And if you don't restrict it, it can run any commands on your machine without asking you first, if I'm not mistaken. And that's, of course, dangerous because the AI is probably not malicious, but you never know which ideas it generates, which hallucinations it might generate. Or maybe you're having an AI application that also works on data that might be generated by users. So you have an AI application that might be running on some web server, and users can send messages to it, and then you have some logic there, be it with an MCP or not, does not matter. You have some logic to give it some tools to execute commands on your local server hard drive for whichever reason, to, for example, create folders for files submitted by those users. Well, if a user is able to perform a prompt injection, it might get your AI to actually use its tools to delete the hard drive or expose data by other users or do anything like that. So yeah, definitely don't let AI do security relevant or in general any kind of critical stuff unchecked. Don't do that. Are there chapters dedicated to TypeScript in my book? No, it's about JavaScript. Okay, so we got the GitHub MCP server here, and yeah, you can see that it exposes various tools through that standardized protocol, which LLM-based applications that are valid MCP clients will understand. And then those AI applications, without any code by us, will be able to call these tools if they feel like they need to, well, do all kinds of stuff with GitHub. Or I guess we also have tools for fetching web content. So for visiting a website and loading that website and extracting the content from that website. So we can do stuff like that. What else do we have? Google Maps for, I don't know if you need that in Cursor, but maybe in Claude Desktop you have a question about restaurants in your area. It could, of course, be helpful if your AI would be able to interact with Google Maps then. So that's the kind of stuff you can do. So maybe we should just give that a try, I would say, before we start building our own MCP. Now, I said that I'm also using Windsurf. Here it is, in an empty project, essentially. And this is Windsurf's Cascade here, of course, which is basically its AI chat agent thing. And here you can see that we have 0 available MCP servers because Windsurf is a valid MCP client. It supports that MCP protocol. So what we can do is we can add MCP servers. Now, I'm not sure how it works. We'll find out together. We can add MCP servers. And if we do that, then Windsurf should be able to use these servers for whichever tasks we throw at it. So I guess what we have to do is install servers by adding this kind of code here to this MCP config JSON file. So that would be the code for adding the GitHub MCP server. Let's see which server I want to use. So I think Windsurf already is able to visit websites and so on, so that's not too interesting to add. SQLite interaction sounds interesting. How does that work? An MCP server implementation that provides database interaction and business intelligence capabilities through SQLite. This server enables running SQL queries, analyzing business data, and automatically generating business insight memos. So again, not something I necessarily need in my code editor, I guess. Though maybe I want to look up some development, some data I generated during testing. So yeah, maybe I want it there too. This server exposes a single dynamic resource, which can then be used by the LLM, I guess. And how would I install that? This is probably how I install it in Windsurf. That looks similar. So I replace the GitHub entry here with SQLite. Parent of server's repo. Now, I wonder, usage with Claude desktop, is the usage the same for Windsurf? Like if I Windsurf SQLite MCP. Is that the same? I guess we'll find out. So of course, this is currently for a database called TestDB. And this probably needs to be adjusted too, though I'm not sure to what. Parent of server's repo. I mean, there probably is some official documentation. Windsurf MCP. How do I install MCPs? This feature is currently only available for paying individual users. I'm in the free trial. I'm not sure if I can actually use that then, but we'll see. Configuring MCP. To set up MCP with Cascade, navigate to Windsurf settings, advanced settings, or command palette, open Windsurf settings. Okay. So that's probably not how I do it. Instead, I'll go to the Windsurf settings page. Add server. Ah, okay, there is like a server browser in there. That's convenient. SQLite is not there though. I could add a custom server, but now I'm back to this. So it's probably easier to get started to simply add one of these existing servers here. Sequential thinking, an MCP server implementation that provides a tool for dynamic and reflective problem solving. Is it not doing that by default? Playwright. A model context protocol server that provides browser automation capabilities using Playwright. This server enables LLMs to interact with web pages. Stripe, Slack. Well, let's try the sequential thinking one. Let's see if that works. Because it sounds like one where I don't have to do a lot of setup work. Because I don't want to do a lot of setup work. Okay, so it added this sequential thinking server here. Refresh servers. Okay, and now it got one MCP available. Now, of course, that's probably a very simple one. It's not really using any external tools, which would be the main use case for MCPs. I guess this one just is there to like get the LLM to answer or generate tokens in a more structured way. We'll see. I can say think step by step. How would you create a Node.js application? Let's see if it uses that MCP. So it says by using sequential thinking. Yeah, and it wants to use, so here it now basically found out which tools it has because it is such a client and I installed that server. And it tells me that it's using this tool, sharing a thought with that tool. Now, I'm not sure what that tool then does, but it's using it. And I think we'll build our own server soon and then hopefully understand a bit better how we can use it and what's happening under the hood. But here it basically now found out how it should generate or how it should structure a Node.js project. It probably would have been able to do that without that MCP2, but we can see how we could get it to use an MCP. Yeah, the GitHub server is probably also easy, but I have to create like a GitHub app, I guess, on GitHub and share it. And I don't want it to mess with my repos, also because there are some private ones which I don't want to share accidentally, so I won't do that here. Is with limit credit Windsurf usage. So I'm currently in the free trial. If I would use Windsurf on a day-to-day basis, I would probably pay for it. That's what I'm doing with Cursor too. And I'm currently just trying out which one I like better. Though I always end up back with Visual Studio Code, to be honest. But I'll give it a try at least. If you use Windsurf, can you then unsubscribe from ChatGPT? So that's a good question. I mean, like the Windsurf and Cursor, of course, they're all optimized for coding tasks. So I assume you can use their chats for any kinds of questions, but there probably is some system prompt in there that tells them something like, you are an experienced software engineer, blah, 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 blah. So if you then ask for travel plans, you might not get the best possible response. So I guess you can replace ChatGPT with many things, with Anthropic, Claude, with Google Gemini, many other chatbots out there, but probably not with those coding tools. Regarding the next course, unfortunately, I got no updates planned right now. I'm sorry. Solarius School, I guess you stopped now, but that sounds very spammy and weird. So, yeah. Okay, so that was arguably not useful MCP, but it was like a first MCP being used. And we'll build our own one, and then hopefully that makes it all a bit more sense. I guess you can see. I guess we can try one thing. I'm interested in seeing if that works. If I go to the settings again, if I add that Playwright MCP so that it can basically emulate a browser or like visit browser pages programmatically. If I do that here, so the Playwright is installed. Let's see. Can I say something like, what's the latest article published by Maximilian Schwarzmüller on his webpage? So in theory, I would now hope that it understands that it doesn't know that from its built-in knowledge, so to say, and that it needs to use a tool for visiting this website. Now, I think that Windsurf, the editor already like provides web access, but maybe it's going to use Playwright to open a browser window, navigate to my website. No, but it's using web search here, and it's also using the wrong website. So it's unfortunately, it's using a tool built into this application, but it's not using Playwright. But we can try something else. We can try something else to get it to increase our chances. Analyze the layout, the visual layout of maximilianschwarzmüller.com. Maybe there it's just not going to fetch so here that looks better. Now, so it tries to install Playwright or Chromium, the browser, so to say. So let's do that. Let's see whether that works. True, I could also write a Windsurf instruction file. But let's see if that works now. I don't think I need to. No, I can't confirm this. I'm just not sure if it's really doing something here or if it wants me to do something. I mean, I can also run that command myself. Oh, here in the console. I had to confirm this. Okay, so now it's installing that. Yeah, Royan, thanks so much for tuning in. Good night then. So now it's installing that browser. And then, hopefully, through that tool, it's going to visit the website, take a screenshot, because it can do that with Playwright, and then analyze that. So it's calling, yep, on a new screen. Wait a second, here, that is the window it opened. That is the window it opened. And it took a look at that web page. I'll leave it open for now. And it tells me that I have a clean minimalist navigation bar with white background, site logo name on the left, hero section, large prominent personal photo. Well, that's actually not the case. Content structure. So I'm not sure if it analyzed the page correctly, but it did definitely open that browser window. So that is how it can use tools like Playwright. Okay, so that's the idea behind MCPs, therefore, is to basically give LLM-based applications access to tools and to do that in a standardized way so that you don't have to like reinvent the wheel all the time. So that's that. Now, we have a broad variety of MCP servers we could install. We could do it manually in that JSON file. We can install them into other applications as well, of course. You see, it's a very long list of servers. You can check it out on your own, of course. Now I want to try building my own MCP server and hopefully get that to run in Windsurf here in this example. So for that, I'm on this Model Context Protocol GitHub page here by Anthropic, I believe. And in there, we find a link to the documentation, which then will hopefully tell us how we can build our own server. We get various SDKs here. So you can write your server in a broad variety of languages. You can maybe also create it from scratch without an SDK in other languages. But for example, there is a TypeScript SDK. And that is what I want to use here to create a MCP server. So actually, let's try that quick start here. Back in Windsurf, I'm in a new project here. It's an empty project. And in there, I'll run npm init-y to initialize this as a Node.js project so that then I can install this TypeScript SDK with npm install Model Context Protocol SDK. And then I'll copy that code here and add a new file, server.ts, let's say. Here it is. Paste that in. It's importing stuff from that package I just installed and from sod, which I therefore also probably need to install, I guess. And then here it's creating a server, having the code here to start it, essentially. And now the question just would be how I wire this up to Windsurf. I can use the MCP inspector for testing, sure, but there are a lot of examples. I like that. But how can I... So if I'm going to run this server.ts file, with the latest version of Node, which should be able to run TypeScript files like this because it has that support. So now that server should be up and running. And I should go to my package.json file and set the type here to module and then restart it. So now it's up and running. So the server is up and running. Now I should be able to add it to Windsurf, make it available as a tool, and then it should be able to interact with that server, whatever it does. We'll explore that in a second. So yeah, how do I do that? Open Windsurf settings page, add server, add a custom server. Yeah, so how do I do that? So I could have like my own demo server here. Do I have like a name here which I have to use? Okay, how can I close this cascade here? Do I have a name here? Name demo. Thank you so much for the subscription, the boy savior. Thank you so much. Okay, so the name here is demo, so I'll use... I almost picked the right name here. And then the command here... What's the command? Is the command that needs to run to start it? No. Yeah, I would let Windsurf Cascade write the MCP server with your help. I plan on doing that as a next step. Now I just want to find out how I install that server I wrote myself. So if I add a new server, the JSON, yeah, I can add it like this: command npx args, and then the name. I mean, what we can do, you are absolutely right regarding that. We can simply ask it. Maybe it's able to do that. I want to install my demo MCP server, which I built here, so that you, Windsurf, can use it. How do I edit MCP config JSON to make that work? Let's see if it comes up with something clever here. If not, I'll have to dig a bit more into the whole documentation. What does MCP stand for? It's a model context protocol. A new trendy thing? Yeah, kind of. The goal is to standardize how LLM applications can use tools and data sources. What's the next course? I don't know yet. I'm not working on one right now. I need a roadmap to learn AI. Could you give me any references to start? So AI, of course, is a broad topic. The question is whether you want to learn how to build your own AI models, which is a totally different thing, or if you want to learn how to efficiently prompt engineer and use AI, or if you want to learn how to build applications that use OpenAI's APIs. So it's a broad area. The question really is what you want to do with AI. In general, being able to efficiently work with ChatGPT, knowing about prompt engineering and how LLMs work under the hood will always be helpful. So that's probably a good starting point. So it now edited my config file here like this to... Okay, and it edited it again. It now wants to install TSX for executing my server. It could do that with just Node, I guess, but sure, go ahead. And it then wants to run... Maybe it is all just about starting the server. Maybe it is that simple. We'll see. So, like this maybe? So if I edit it like this, if I refresh, does it now have access to my own demo server? I'm not sure. It's not looking that great. I really want to thank you for all courses, React, Next, Vue, JavaScript, and TypeScript, every single one. They have helped me a lot. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Super happy that all these courses were helpful, that you got a lot out of them. Really amazing to get that feedback. Thank you so much, the boy savior. Thank you very much. So it's not looking like it's able to use my own server here. Windsurf. How can I add my own custom MCP server? Maybe we find a blog article by someone who had exactly the same problem. Building your own MCP server. Sure. Okay, I don't want to sign up for Medium. Yeah, that's the official documentation where we already were. It maybe comes down to just reading the entire official MCP documentation. I just always try to take a shortcut, but maybe that's not possible here. So let's take a look at the MCP documentation. Building MCPs with LLMs, concepts, development, introduction, quick start, example servers for server developers. Okay, so here we got the official documentation for building such a server. And then if we build our own server, it really is just about running that server file, if I see that correctly. In this case with Python, but either way. So that's clearly not going anywhere, this refresh servers thing. Now we got 0 servers remaining. So let's try and sure, try that. I'm open to your suggestions. I mean, oops, TSX server, TS. It looks like the server is running, right? So I'm not sure what the problem is here. It looks very similar to what we had here. Maybe we need something like this. But now it's totally hung up. Let's restart Windsurf, reopen the window. Let's try again. 3 available MCP servers, though demo request failed. So it noticed that there is a demo server, of course, because it's here, but it's not able to like start and use it. So how about using TSX here? Does that change things? Nope. How about Node? And I don't get any information here why it's not able to run that. I mean, if I compile server TS, to server JS, and I then change this like this to use JavaScript instead of TypeScript. Yeah, that's not working. So maybe we should try debugging as suggested with that MCP inspector that was mentioned here. So somewhere in this TypeScript SDK article, here to test your server, you can use the MCP inspector. Let's give that a try. From an MCP server repository, to inspect an MCP server implementation, there's no need to clone this repo. Instead, use npx, for example, if your server is built it. Okay. So I definitely need to compile it. Now, what's weird, maybe I should have set up my project a bit differently, though. Because there is like no tsconfig file in there, and I would expect that TypeScript SDK to not just give me a bunch of imports which I can use, but I also would expect to get like an example project set up. But I guess not. So what I'll do is I will then just compile it myself and hope that I got the right settings. So what I can do is I can head over to my website, because in there I got an example tsconfig file. Add that here. Copy that in. And add, whoops. And also in there, add no, not out file. Am I overlooking something? Oh, it's already there, out there, dist. Okay, so now if I run tsc in there, that gets compiled into a dist folder, server.js in the dist folder, and now I can use that inspector to run it npx model context protocol inspector node, and then the path to my compiled server here. So in my case, that is dist server.js. And now let's see whether that works. Let's see whether that starting MCP inspector, proxy server listing on port 3000. Okay. Let me open that here. Arguments, transport type connected. Ping server. So I don't see anything here, but I'm not sure if my server is doing something I could be seeing. I guess we added an add tool. So I think this demo server, which I just copied from the official TypeScript MCP SDK GitHub page, does in theory provide an add tool to give that LLM the capabilities of adding two numbers. And one resource, which I guess is some data it's exposing. But I'm not seeing that here in the inspector. Now I am connected to this server.js. Oh, this was a button. Okay, so there is the add function. Oh, great. So I can add two numbers, run tool, I get the result here. And this is now, by the way, and we have a so-called template. I guess it's a prompt template. Okay, so it's working. The server is working. That is good to know. That is good to know. So now back to the Windsurf settings and to the configuration file here. So now it's in the dist folder, server.js, and running it with Node should be okay because that is how it was executed here as well. So maybe it will now work. Maybe I just compiled it incorrectly before. Nope. I always love it when things work that well when I live stream. I mean, it worked in the inspector. It's just not working here in Windsurf, I guess. Which is too bad. I mean, just to double check, if I run node dist server.js, that starts the server. It is a running process. I'm just not sure what I have to add here to make Windsurf aware of it. NPX? I don't think so. Nope. Okay, well, I won't waste time on that. It is generally working. I just have no clue how I would add it in Windsurf. I think the server has to be running. So you think if I started like this, and then here, I'm just not sure what I have to insert here to get it to connect to this running server. Because if I simply copy what I see for the other service I installed from the marketplace, so to say, then it's not working. That's my problem here. Even though the server is now running here. Yeah, it's my first time trying Windsurf. I've used Cursor before, but have not installed any custom MCPs there either. And I typically always end up going back to VS Code somehow, but yeah. Do you have Playwright MCP? Yeah, I have the Playwright MCP. We tested that a couple of minutes ago. Oh, wow, we got a lot of comments. I just want to make an AI model. Do not want to use any API or existing model. Well, just wanting to make an AI model is probably the hardest part of all of those things you could do with AI. And I have never done any model. I'm no machine learning expert, so I'm probably the wrong person to ask if you want to get into like really building AI models or training them. Sorry. Constantly buying courses isn't productive, right? What advice do you have to break that habit? No, definitely not productive. I mean, courses can be helpful, obviously, but you want to start building stuff. And one thing can be to build like clones of websites, projects, applications you find out there, or simply set a goal of building your own software as a service. Copy something that already exists. Doesn't have to be super fancy, but build something, have a goal, practice what you learned. That is one way of getting out of that tutorial hell, I guess. Will Go make me a better software developer or Rust? Well, I would say both can and can't. You become a better software developer by building stuff, by writing code, no matter which language you're using. Now, I would say Rust is the more complex of the two, though I'm no Rust expert at all. I'm also not a Go expert, but I have more Go experience than Rust. Rust is more complex to write, I would say, which does not necessarily mean that Go is simple. You can, of course, write simple code and still build bad applications, but Rust definitely... It's easier to run into errors and problems with Rust in my short experience with Rust. I took your React course in 2020. Thank you for putting food on my table. Yeah, thank you so much. Super happy to hear that the course was helpful. Yes, you have to do that with Figma. Run the server. The other are npx commands to install. The other is the server. When you are running server protocol, it has to be running. I'm pretty sure the difference is the server or a command. Demo should be server instead of command. I think. So the server is up and running here. Oh, here I don't just can add. Demo should be server instead of command. So I should have server here. I'll just MCP config JSON. Can I find some example configs to maybe get a better understanding of how these things are set up? You would think that this is a really simple, straightforward thing I'm trying to do here, and maybe it is, but unless I'm blind, it's not something that's super obviously documented somewhere. And I'm really confused because all these examples I find really look like you're writing down the command to start the server. But when I did that, it did not work. Or maybe the path was wrong, the path in which it is looking for that server. I don't know. Maybe it's not looking in my local folder. It probably isn't, but how do I know? I mean, I guess what I can do is like I can have like users have my full path in there. And then again, go back to command here and node like this and try again. Yeah, it's running. That's it. Okay, so we needed an absolute path. So now it started the server. It's running. And now if I say add 1 and 5, it should theoretically use my server because I'm providing the add tool there. Here it goes, calling add, passing these two values into it and giving me the result. And that's, of course, also a good example for where we want to use a tool, be it through an MCP or not. But adding numbers is, of course, something LLMs are not necessarily great at because they're just predicting tokens. They might predict the right token, the right result, but especially for more complex calculations, that is not necessarily the case. Now, of course, here in Windsurf, it's unlikely that you're going to do a lot of addition. You're probably going to do more development stuff, but it shows us how such an MCP works. Okay, so it is up and running. Now we can continue working on it. That is great. So what we already saw here is that we can set up a server to make tools available to the AI application, so to Cursor in this case. We can also make resources available, as it seems, and I have to find out what exactly resources are, if it's data or something else. Thankfully, the core concepts are explained here in the official MCP documentation. Here we also see the architecture again, that we have like two things. We have the server, that's the thing we're just building, and we have clients, that is, for example, Windsurf and Cursor, and they're communicating through a standardized protocol. And our server here has that protocol. We're implementing that protocol because I'm setting up that server with help of the official MCP SDK for TypeScript. And under the hood, that is implementing that protocol. So that is under the hood. What this TypeScript SDK is doing is really just simplified, you could say it is preparing text that will be sent behind the scenes to the LLM to make it aware of the tools and resources it can use and to tell it how it should reply if it wants to use one of these resources. And then it also has all the code for handling that reply, executing the right tool code. So this code, for example, if the LLM told it, the server, to use a tool, and then the tool will be executed. This code, which we wrote, the LLM is not writing the code. We did it here, or we copied it, but it's code that's not automatically generated by the LLM. And then the result is fed back into the LLM, and all that is done behind the scenes by that MCP SDK through that protocol here. That's how it works. Thank you so much, Mr. Code 9000. Happy you're liking the stream. Thank you very much. So now it's able to use two kinds of transport mechanisms, as it sounds. Either standard I/O for local processes, so if the server is running on our local machine and the client is too, which is the case here, for example, in Windsurf. Windsurf is running on my machine, my demo server is running on my machine, the Playwright server was running on my machine, so then it's using standard I/O for exchanging that text, so to say, or we can use server send events if we had like a remote MCP server, if we had a hosted server somewhere. MCP has these main types of messages that are exchanged between client and server. Requests, which expect a response, results, and errors. Okay, and then we also have notifications. Okay. Error handling implementation example. Yeah, that's what we just did. Okay, so let's take a look. What are resources? Expose data and content from your servers to LLMs. Resources are core primitives in the model context protocol that allow servers to expose data and content that can be read by clients and used as context for LLM interactions. So here we are exposing a greeting resource. And I guess I could now also expose a my website resource. Now, a resource template combines a URI pattern with optional functionality to enumerate all resources. Now, I'm not sure how exactly this here works. I'll probably have to keep on reading. So what I want to do is I want to, in the end, provide a link to my website, to the LLM. I'm just not sure how I do that. Sure, I give my resource a name, my website, but now I need the value, which is the link to my website, the URL of my website. And I'm not sure how I do that. Let's see what the official docs say. Resources are identified using URIs that follow this format. Protocol, host, path. For example, file, Postgres screen. The protocol and path structure is defined by the MCP server implementation. Servers can define their own custom URI schemes. So I could say website URL, and then what? For my website, for example. Resources can contain two types of content: text resources, binary resources, so files or various kinds of text. Servers expose a list of concrete resources via the resources list endpoint. Each resource includes a URI, a name, a description, and a MIME type, though the last two are optional. Yeah, but how does this work? I would like to see some examples. Set request handler, list resources request schema. Okay, so that is a request handler we can define to let the LLM query us for information about which resources it can ask about. So for example, here we're telling the LLM you can ask about application logs. And if it then does ask about application logs, which it indicates by generating this token here in the end, this one, then this request handler would kick in and would fetch the concrete log it's asking for. So what I could do here, I mean, it's here I'm using server.resource, not server.setRequestHandler. I wonder if that's a shortcut. So if I could have a website like a resource like websites, and if it wants to know something about a website, it should send this token website and then identifier or something like this. I'm not sure what list undefined means. A callback to list all resources matching this template. So this here will be, whoops, this code here, this here will be executed if the LLM decides to use this resource here. So if it decides that it needs some information about a website, it needs a website URL, it then gives me that concrete identifier. So I define that as a placeholder for the LLM to fill, and then this code will be executed with the LLM generated identifier. And then I can send back. So I could then, for example, I guess, we'll see if it works, check if identifier oh, this is not. If identifier equals my I'm not sure if that will work, but we'll see. And in that case, I return https Maximilian Schwarzmüller.com. And then I could also like return other websites for other identifiers. And of course, typically you would not hard code something there, but this is just for demo purposes, obviously. And I don't need the URI here, I guess. And identifier, yeah, sure. So what's the problem here? Oh God. I probably set this up in the wrong way. Back to the SDK docs we have to go. I need to understand this .resource thing a bit better. How does it work? Resources. Resources are how you expose data to LLMs. They're similar to GET endpoints and REST APIs that provide data but shouldn't perform significant computation or have side effects. So here we're specifying a resource called config. That's the token the LLM should generate if it wants to consume that resource. Okay, and then we need to return an object that has a contents key. That contents key has, in this case here, or always, I don't know, an array full of objects that describe the data that we actually want to return. So I guess my mistake here is that I need to return an object here with a contents key. And in contents, I probably should have an object with some URI and with some text. And still, it's not happy. Text undefined is not assignable to type. But what I don't understand is, do I have to return something here in the, if we don't make it into this if statement, do I have to return something here too? Is that the problem? Yeah, looks like no. Yeah, that was the problem. Okay. So in that case, I'll just return nothing here. I'm not sure what I should fill in for a URI here. I'll just say my website here. I don't know. And now in theory, I do now expose information about a link to my website. Now I'm not sure if the LLM will use the identifier my here if it decides that it wants to go for my website. I wonder if I define the available identifiers here with this list thing here. No. How do I tell the LLM which identifiers are available? Because it needs that information, I guess. A callback to list all resources matching this template. This is required. List resources callback. Is that something they described here? No. So I guess I can, of course, now compile this. And then if I refresh my servers, it should run again with that updated demo server. What's my website? If I ask it, it might want to use my tool here. Okay, it simply took a look at my code here. That's not what's my website URL. But I guess if it takes a look at my code, yeah, it just takes a look at my code here, which also works. So I understand how we provide resources. I'm just not sure how we tell it which identifiers it could have used here. What is the next course you're planning to release? Also, what is the language you enjoy the most? So the next course, I don't know yet. Might be some update, but I don't want to promise anything here, which I then maybe am not able to hold. Language I enjoy the most. So I'm working the most with JavaScript and TypeScript, and I enjoy working with those, unlike many others, I think. But if it's the one I enjoy the most, I'm working so much with it that I almost only know those languages. So yeah, I guess that would be the one I enjoy the most. But I'm sure there will be a lot of people who can't believe it. And to be honest, like whatever language you're using a lot, if it's not Visual Basic, which is horrible, it's fine. At least for me, I get used to it. So that resource stuff is still a bit wonky, but in general, I think it's hopefully clear what the general idea behind this MCP thing is, that we have a very straightforward way of defining our logic and our resources that we want to expose, and we don't have to do anything else. Because of course here I could also add a server tool, call it extract website data or content, let's say. And then I could define my schema here for the parameters I need to perform that task. So that would be the URL, and we define that with help of sort, so that would be a string. And then we define a function that will actually be executed when the LLM tells the MCP to use that tool here, which it does by simply telling it that it wants to use the tool with that name. And then here in that code, I can of course do whatever I want. I'm not limited to adding two numbers, for example. So in there, I could also fetch my URL here, get my response, or at least I hope that I can do that. We'll see whether it works. Extract the text and then return this object, which must have this shape, as we found out by now, to hand back the content of the website to the LLM. So that should be a simple way of visiting a website and getting the content. So if I recompile this and refresh this to restart the server, now it has two tools available. And now if I say something like extract the website content of this article, and I then visit my website here, go to this article, let's say, grab that URL. Now, as I said before, Windsurf has the capability to visit websites built in, so it might not use my tool, but it also might. We'll see. But it might, yeah, it's using the built-in support. So that's unfortunate. Since Windsurf is able to visit websites and extract content by default, it's not using my MCP tool here. Instead, it's using the sequential thinking one here for whatever reason. But of course, if this would not be built in, this support to fetch data from websites, it probably would use my tool here, since the name makes it pretty clear that this tool can be used to extract the content of a website. And we would then give our application the capability to do that, to extract content from a website. Now, I think what we can try, that might be interesting too. Of course, we're not limited to building servers. We can also build clients. We can build our own application that uses a large language model that then is able to also interact with MCP servers. So in the official documentation, here we get some instructions for how we can do that. Now, I don't want to use the Anthropic SDK because I don't think I have an API account for them. But that shouldn't be a problem. So if I think I can do it in the same folder here. Why not? If I just install this Model Context Protocol SDK, it already is installed. Great. So I don't need to do anything there. So therefore, I can add a client TS file here. And in there, I should now be able to build my own MCP client, my own application that may use AI, an LLM, and access various tools. So let's see. For that, I will, yes, add a .env file here. And in there, I'll add my OpenAI API key, and I will not show this key to you. I'm sorry. So let me quickly do that off screen. First, I need to grab my API key, though. Easier said than done. Do I have some application where I used it? Let me see. Yep, got it. I hope that one still works. Okay, great. So I added the API key, my OpenAI API key to .env. Now I'll also install the OpenAI SDK into this project because I want to use that for building a very simple LLM application using that. So I'll import from OpenAI. And it's been some time since I last used it. Let's see if I still know how to reuse it. Yeah, so we set up our API key here. Do we also set up the model here? No. So now we can use OpenAI to I think they have like the new responses API, which I could give a try. But I hate it if those AI tools give you the wrong completion. Seriously, sometimes I wonder if I really am more productive with them. So that's the new responses API, or API provided by OpenAI, which can be used to communicate with their API and send prompts and get back responses. So here for the model, I want to use, I'm not sure if I can use the very latest ones. So I will use GPT-4o Mini, also because that's not too expensive. Then the input is my, input, I guess is my prompt. And I want to get that from my command line. So I'll set up my script here such that I can read from my terminal, so to say, from standard input, so that I can enter a message then when I run this code here. And then with that message, I'll execute this code to send my message that was entered in the terminal to the OpenAI API. And I'll get back a promise here. So we need async. I get my response, and this response has the output text that was generated. So let's maybe do it like this, console log text, and let's see whether that works. For that, I'll run the code just like this because modern Node can do that. And yep, I need to load my env file, which I can do like this if I'm not mistaken. That all works with modern Node. You don't need to install any extra packages if you're using the latest version of Node. By the way, again, another shameless plug. I got an article. Modern Node.js can do that. And in there, I describe all these fancy things you can do with just Node.js, with modern Node.js without installing anything extra. So now if I enter a message like, who are you? That should be sent to the OpenAI API and I should get back a response. Yep, I do. So that is working. And now my goal is to give this AI tools, to give it access to my MCP server in the end. And for example, give it the capability to add 2 numbers and to fetch some website content. So let's see how we do that. Back to the official docs. We need to set up our MCP client now, and we do that by using this client thingy and standard IO client transport. And actually, now that I saw it there, I can use the promises version of readlines here as well. So like this. Looks good. And I will now add these imports. And then set up my MCP client, which looks like this. By the looks of it. MCP client, okay. Now I don't need Anthropic, don't need that. Regarding the tools, I'm not sure. This does not need to be set. New client, MCP client CLI. Methods will go here. Okay, we'll see how that works. Server connection management. Next, we'll implement the method to connect to an MCP server. Okay, so that's this code here. And I'll simply copy it here to be honest, because I just want to see whether it works before I then analyze what it does. Now, I don't need the Python stuff here because here I don't plan on connecting to any Python servers. I'll just use my JavaScript server, which I'm building. So the command is node, I guess, to start that server. So now I'm building what Windsurf did before me. So there's that. This is how it tries to interact with the MCP and, for example, find out which tools it may use. And that is, of course, important information that can be provided to the LLM. And now we need more methods to handle queries provided by the user, to generate responses, and so on. So let's add this method here. And since we're doing this all here, as it seems, in an object-oriented way, I can, of course, also go here and add my model. And that should be the result of calling this. And I'll comment this out for now and use it later so that I can use my model down here. I got a bunch of types which I don't have here. Are they? Okay, they're all coming from the Anthropic SDK. So I'll use good old Annie here as a shortcut. And in process query, here, that's where I want to use model, and I want to use this responses API I just used before to create a response, use a model. Max tokens does not exist here. Max output tokens, well, I don't care about that here. And then, yeah, we need to manage the messages. Or I guess here it's instructions probably, no. How can I pass a history? Or can input be, is input, can that be an array? How does input look like when using the responses API? Yeah, I think it can be an array of messages like this. So this messages array here. I just quickly need to check again. Role and content. Yeah, that looks good. I just checked on the other screen that I pass the right data to it. So that is how we try to generate responses. Response output text is now the, well, text. Okay, what's it doing here? It checks if we got, okay, okay. So the response can actually be that we have some text or that it wants to use a tool. Now that's of course where things get tricky. So in the end, what I want to check here. So I want to check if response tool choice is a thing. Or is this I'm not sure how exactly the LLM will communicate that it wants to use some tool here. What do we have? The problem is that I'm running out of time again. Oh, we'll see. Well, what is the output? Okay, so output could be a message, which I guess is the equivalent to text. And in that case, I'm simply retrieving the content as text. It could also be, okay, function call, file search call. So yeah, the problem clearly is that I have an example here that's fine-tuned for the Anthropic SDK, and I don't know what the OpenAI equivalent is. So which kind of content will get back if the LLM wants to use a tool. And since I only have around 10 minutes left, I'll probably not get this to work. That's a bit unfortunate, of course. Now, the idea would have been that we have code where we essentially make the LLM aware of the tools it can use. That's what's happening here in this connect to server code, because there we define the tools that are available and we describe them, or this code describes them, so that they are made available to the LLM. So for every query we send to the LLM, for every input that's coming from the user, this tool information would have been added to it behind the scenes. That's my understanding. And then when we have an actual message, which is sent to the LLM along with the information, or probably we have like a system message that's sent first, which describes the tools that are available. And then when we have an actual message by a user, the LLM knows which tools are available and it knows what the actual message by the user is. So then it replies either with the final result if it doesn't need to call any tools, or it replies with the information that it needs to use some tools. And in that case, we would have some code that is prepared to handle that tool call, and we would then call a tool through the MCP protocol. So now that's where our MCP client would reach out to the MCP server and call that tool. So in our example, we have that add tool, for example, defined on the server. That is one tool that could be called by the client if the LLM tells our code here that it wants to use that tool. Then our code uses the tool, gets the result, and feeds that back into the LLM. So sends a new message to the LLM, essentially saying, hey, here's the result of calling that tool. This was the original question by the user. Now please give me the final result. That's the idea here. And yeah, it would have been cooler to see that, but unfortunately I'm running out of time. Of course, you can try it on your own. If you have an Anthropic API key, it should all just be about copy and pasting this. As I said before, I have never done this before. It's the first time I'm exploring this, which is why I don't have like a finished solution prepared, which I would typically have in my course, of course. Could you run it and log out what the response looks like? I cannot run this because the code is currently not finished and broken, because I copied that code that was fine-tuned or that was written for the Anthropic SDK, and I wanted to adjust it for the OpenAI SDK, but that simply takes a bit longer because I started using this response API, which is also pretty new and unknown to me. So this code wouldn't run right now. But what would happen is that I ask something like, what's 2 + 2? It would connect to our server as we saw it before from inside Windsurf, where we also installed our own custom server. And it would call this tool, get back the response, and then feed that to the LLM. And the LLM would then in the end reply with something. The sum of 2 + 2 is 4. That is what we would get. It's not about mock data here. The problem is that I need to wire up this logic for handling the actual responses I get by the LLM. I need to mock everything here. I could just like hard code a result if I want to mock that, because the whole point is about having the LLM interact with the tools. That's the problem. Hi Max, bro. I am a Node.js junior developer, and it seems like there are a lot of Node.js people in our country, and was thinking about switching to Go. What do you think is a good idea to switch languages in such cases? So you want to switch to Go because there's less competition there, you mean? That's hard to tell. Can be a valid strategy, and Go is definitely a popular programming language. So using that instead of Node, if there is less competition, if there are maybe less jobs, but for the jobs that are available, there are less applicants, that could, of course, be valid. Yeah, you can absolutely try this. And go in that direction. You should probably check first if there are Go jobs in your area, though, and if those jobs are interesting to you, I guess. Yeah, I will probably leave it at that. I might finish this off screen, polish it all, and pick up on that in the next stream, because I'd love to get this to work and in general get a deeper understanding of how this all works, because this was, of course, all pretty raw and unpolished today, because I did just get started with it and I have never written or implemented my own MCP server or client. Hopefully I could at least help a bit with understanding what the idea is, that the idea really just is about having a standardized way of exposing tools and data to MCPs, that it's about wrapping APIs and using pre-built servers, possibly built by others, so that you can easily add more capabilities to your LLM applications. Because, of course, you could also build your own application that uses an LLM and write all your own logic for telling the LLM how it should reply. If you want to use a certain tool, then write your own logic for using that tool, making some request, whatever, and so on. You could do all of that, but of course, using this protocol makes it easier to build a server, share it with others, and then those others don't have to do the work again. And ultimately, at some point in the future, we'll have a lot of servers for a lot of services like GitHub, like Google Maps, and so on. We can just add them quickly and easily to our LLM-based application and enrich that application with more and more tools. That's the idea. Which IDE is better, Tray or Windsurf? I have not used the first one. I have barely heard of it. I read it like a couple of times, but I have not used it at all. And I actually just started using Windsurf yesterday. I used a lot of Cursor and still VS Code. Because one problem I actually have with all those AI-first IDEs is that the autocompletion, the suggestions are sometimes so aggressive that I often accidentally accept like the wrong suggestion. Like I want the standard autocomplete. I just want to complete one word. But when I press tab, it instead takes the AI completion for a whole block, which I did not want. So I have to press enter instead. But my muscle memory is so trained to press tab that I actually end up like deleting a lot of code. Just because I took the wrong completion. So that's why I actually end up with VS Code quite often. But yeah, there is that. Anyways, that was it for today. Had a first look at MCP. We'll have another look in the future. We'll upload this VOD on my Maximilian Extended YouTube channel. And yeah, hopefully I see you again in future streams. Have a great evening, day, morning, whatever it is for you. Bye.